Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Haziq Patel and I am the Senior Coordinator at Anis Hussain DHA. Today we are going to talk about how to prepare ourselves for the IBA test, especially the verbal section. Now, सबसे पहले हम किसी भी टेस्ट की बात करते हैं तो in order to prepare well for that particular test, we need to understand what that test expects of us. The expectations जब हमारी clear हो जाती हैं तो हमारी preparation ज़्यादा बेहतर हो सकती है. So IBA expects or any other university expects in its entrance exam that you are proficient in the language. What does proficiency mean? First up, proficiency means that you need to understand what the written text is. You need to be comfortable when it comes to expressing yourself in the same medium. सबसे पहले इसमें comfort कैसे हासिल होगी? नंबर वन सेक्शन जो कि सबसे ज़्यादा डिफिकल्ट होता है पीपल बिलोंगिंग टू आवर कम्युनिटी टू आवर कंट्री कि जिनको रीडिंग की जनरली आदत नहीं है इज द रीडिंग कॉम्प्रिहेंशन सेक्शन. Reading comprehension questions pertain to absorbing the message of the text itself and then answering questions from that text. Reading comprehensions के लिए familiarity होना जरूरी है. Most students today opt to read novels, something that I do not thoroughly suggest. Novel reading pastime हो सकता है, but that doesn't really aid you or aid a student to be proficient in the language and to be comfortable with the existing structures. So how do you go about it? I suggest you read articles and you vary the genre of articles. आपके पास Reader's Digest है, you could have The Economist, you could use the magazine The New Scientist. You can also read newspapers such as the Dawn News. The first page, the foreign pages, news that have the foreign pages or the letters to the editor pages that actually tells you that or that actually makes you more accustomed to the structures that are generally used in the writing section. So when you are used to the aim is that you are familiar with the text and you are familiar with the overall structure of the language. Next is vocabulary. The biggest concern when it comes to when it comes to learning a language is learning its vocabulary. So a number of people you'll find they'll tell you कि जी हमने इतने 1000 words याद किए थे और इतने 1000 words याद किए थे. Think in terms of the languages that you and I speak today. जितनी भी languages that we speak today रोजमर्रा जिंदगी में we have never literally sat down and learned and memorized words for it. We have always done what? We have heard those words and we tend to use those words in sentences of our own. Again, हमें words की spelling से पहले उसका usage आ जाता है. Bearing that in mind, another aim, which is similar to reading, is familiarity with the words, not memorization. So words can not be memorized. Words can be memorized, but to a limited extent. But words can be more familiarized when it comes to expanding your learning and most importantly, expanding your vocab. So vocabulary के लिए first exercise is whatever word you come across when you read a text, you look it up in the dictionary, consciously try to use one or two words in sentences of your own. So that's the first part. Secondly, we can always find such people who share a similar aim that we have, and that is preparing for university exams, and we can try to converse in English and force ourselves to use those words when we converse with those people in English. Again, the more familiar you are with words, the better it is. So the science behind all of this is when we tend to converse in English or when we tend to converse in any language, our mind tends to think in the same language. What happens is that when we're speaking, we are often thinking of Urdu words and we end up translating those words into English, and that takes up a lot of time. Then we fill up those gaps with a lot of ahs and oohs, and again, those gap fillers shouldn't be there. The more familiar we are with words, the better our thinking in terms of that language becomes. And again, chahe then IBA tests you for synonyms, antonyms, sentence completion, all works. Next is grammar. Let us reflect for a little while. Let us reflect how is it that we check the grammatical correctness of a sentence. All of us have been through that time when we tend to check the grammatical correctness of what is being said to us. We often find ourselves telling our friends, our peers, okay, this is not how this sentence should be said, this is rather how it should be said. So the device that we use in order to identify grammatical errors is our ear. Now, what programs our ear is the society, is this are the structures that we have been hearing, we've been listening to, and that for us is the norm. Anything other than that is not the norm. Versus grammatical correctness is probably can be distant from what we have heard. Coming to how you can prepare yourself for grammar, of course, you have specific grammar books. You can prepare yourself for that from there too, and then you can also prepare yourself when in terms of the common errors that are being tested in the grammar section. You can use the Anis's and preparatory material as well. You can use any material that actually tells you the common mistakes that are tested against. And this is a big process of unlearning and relearning, because what sounds right to the ear is not necessarily grammatically correct. So our aim is to ensure what is grammatically correct versus what is it that we are comfortable with. This is going to help you attend questions of sentence usage and sentence correction, which actually pertains to the grammatical correctness of a sentence and the logical expression of ideas. Next is analyzing poetry. So in recent years, IBA has included the poetry section, the analysis of poetry, in its test. Sometimes it persists with testing on poetry, sometimes it doesn't. So what happens with poetry? So the number one thing that we need to understand is that not all of us have the acumen and have the understanding of interpreting poetry in the best possible way. What needs to be done then is to practice once again with a good pool of poems, about 20 to 25 poems varying in genre, and be able to identify and learn the devices that the poets use in order to express themselves. Once that part is done, although it's a very small part, you can be comfortable that you will be able to comfortably attempt the verbal section. Now, summarizing all of it. The more familiar you are with the language structures that are used in articles, shorter articles or extracted, the more familiar you are with vocab, the more polished your grammar gets, and the more comfortable again you are with poetry, prepares you overall for the IBA test. Number one thing, you don't need to worry about anything. Preparing for mathematics and preparing for verbal are two separate things. For verbal, it's more about working on habits. It's not every year that you will be preparing for a university test, but since it's something different, it requires different habits from you. So being regularly in contact with reading material, consciously trying to use new words, and being innovative when it comes to expressing yourself, trying to be more grammatically correct yourself rather than identifying just grammatical errors in what is spoken to you. That's what holistically is going to prepare you for the verbal section of the IBA test. Now you can definitely contact any of our campuses and check with them whenever their courses are beginning and whenever or whatever the schedules are, and get registered with us. You will have really good material to work with, be it for grammar, be it for poetry, reading comprehensions, and vocabulary. Thank you.